Let's head back to the future with R-Type 3 Dimensions, a remake of the SNES exclusive R-Type 3 with new graphics and modes. Now, personally, I love modern takes on 2D side-scrollers as it's a chance for the developers to give more accessible features to let newcomers in and enjoy it, while also adding new challenges for returning players or online leaderboards. So let's dig into the features of R-Type 3 Dimensions, as it features a classic mode, which is mostly just the same game that you played on the Super Nintendo, and an infinite mode, which is supposed to be a beginner friendly mode, and I have my own feelings on that mode myself, and I'll talk about that a little later. It also comes with a plethora of other options, from being able to swap to these new visuals that they had, which do look good, and then you can just swap in the middle of gameplay by pressing a button back to the 2D mode, which I think is fun to do. I never get tired of features like that in games. And there's a host of screen filters, which sadly most of them I just didn't like. I think they just kind of made things look blurry and muddy. Now, one feature I found lacking was the fact that leaderboards are local only, and I feel like that's such an essential feature to have for a game like this that's so focused on high scores and how well you perform in these gauntlet stages. And another thing is that the 2-player is locked to local only. There's no online 2-player. There's no game share, which would have been a nice feature to add for the Switch 2 edition. So essentially, this just feels like a very faithful remake of R-Type 3. So that just leads me to how well this game performs as a remake and how good it feels in comparison to the original game. And to start off, let's go over the visuals. I think the visuals have a really nice touch. When you shoot lasers, they reflect off of a lot of surfaces, which I think is super neat. But I do have some issues with how the lighting is in the game. When there's some super bright lights, they can kind of wash out the image around it, and it's a little unappealing, and I wish they would lower how bright the lights are with certain things. And I think that would overall help the visibility, which can be an issue for 3D games and 2D side-scrolling shooters, as visibility is king when it comes to dodging little tiny lasers that could destroy you in one hit. Now, with the controls, I do like that you can use the triggers to handle a lot of the shooting buttons, as it leaves just the face buttons for you to kind of handle one of R-Type's unique features, which is the Force Orb, I believe it's called. Correct me if I'm wrong. That is a little kind of buddy turret that you can attach to your spaceship via front or back, or launch off and let it do its own thing. It's a really unique thing that the R-Type series does, and it's one of the things that make it stand out for me as a shmup against other shmup titles. So making that easier to handle is nice. I just really wish they added analog controls, because sometimes you need to have such finesse, and digital input will just make you run into a wall by making the slightest tap of the button, and that can feel real demotivating, as it doesn't feel completely your fault if it was just a accidental slip of the thumb. And with games like these, maneuvering is so important that it would be so appreciative if they did add that. Another thing I noticed is the hitboxes don't always seem to be lining up correctly with the 2D counterpart, and it has really made me mess up a few times until I made mental notes on the physical differences between the 2D and 3D versions. Sometimes I just swap to the 2D one for easier understanding of where the hitboxes are. So it's a handy and useful feature, but that comes with another concern, as during hectic moments, swapping between 2D and 3D can cause slowdown, and sometimes in general, there's slowdown in 3D mode. For a pretty simple shmup game, where I've seen other games look way cleaner and sharper and run smoother, I find that very disheartening that they couldn't get this running super smooth on the Switch 2. It runs smooth most of the time, but the fact that it still has slowdown after all these years, it just bums me out. I want super smooth, super crisp gameplay. Now, when it comes to crisp visuals, in handheld it looks really good, very sharp, looks very natural, but on dock it just seems a touch raw and maybe lower resolution than what I'm expecting, as I can really count some of the pixels and it doesn't look quite as sharp as I would hope it would be. So that's all the things the remake has done that I have unique feelings on. Now, to talk about R-Type 3 itself, as a core fundamental game, I do have issues with it as well. This comes from my distaste of trial and error, which a lot of these games were designed around because they were based on arcade games. R-Type 3 wasn't though, so it's a touch more forgiving with its respawns. But it doesn't always escape the trial and error stage hazards that just don't feel fair, and that just can ruin a mood as you're working hard and you lose all your power-ups because a stage hazard you were not aware of begins to happen and hits you out of the blue. That's just something I've never been a huge fan of. But I will say, to counter this, R-Type 3 gives you a ton to work with to work around these issues, like the portable turret, to the power-ups, to a charge ability that both can be a charged beam, and a hyper mode that come useful in different cases, and some are required to take on bosses, so don't forget about charging your beam. And if you were expecting any sort of new content when it comes to like challenges or accessibility features that could make it easier for newcomers to come into, the only modes are Classic and Infinite only really makes it to where when you die, you just continue right where you died. And they consider this a easier mode, but honestly it makes it feel like a slog, because sometimes when you're going through a section, you are needed to have power-ups in certain areas, and if you just respawn without power-ups, you're just going to die immediately again. That's just not fun to me. I'd rather play the original Classic mode even if I die a lot more, because at least it spawns me in sensible areas where I can get my powers back up to take on the gauntlet. Other features I would have loved to have beyond accessibility features that could make it harder so returning players get a new challenge from it, because they probably played this game so much that they're experts at it. Imagine 2x speeds, or enemies that are more aggressive, or even new layouts. That would have been awesome. Now it is just a remake, so I understand those features not coming, but just small little things can make a huge difference, and I feel like they did the bare bones here, and even then it feels like they stumbled in certain areas. So with these feelings that are up and down with this game, I'm really mixed on R-Type 3 Dimensions. I think at its core there's a very solid shmup gameplay, and the visuals can shine in certain moments, but when performance isn't solid and some features make it where you prefer the old-fashioned look compared to the new visuals they worked hard on, and you don't have any accessible features to make a already hard game easier for the player, it just leaves a lot to be desired. I'm always hoping it will grow and add features that could really give this game a new life, but for now those are my feelings. So with that, thank you all for watching. For more things on all things gaming, subscribe to GameXplain. See ya!